So you're coming from my videos where I talked about what's going on in Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and the various different lawsuits involving the attempts for the state to get ICE out of their cities and neighborhoods, the request from Congress to get access to the detention facilities, an attempt by Pon Bondi to prosecute those who protested Central's Church in St. Paul, and loop in journalist Don Lemon into that lawsuit, and the attempt by the Hennepin County and the Minnesota Board of Apprehensions to get access to the crime scenes and investigative materials that they collected after the killing of Alex Preddie. And I'm assuming because they did reference after the killing of Renee Good, 2 United States citizens who were just observers of ICE facilities out there and exercising their First Amendment right, got attacked, assaulted, and killed. And that's my opinion. I'm going to stick with it. And rest in peace to them, those good soldiers, because they should be here today for their families. And yeah. So in this video, I'm going to do one of just 3 things. I'm going to get to it. The first thing is let you know to the extent to which I believe that about the evidence. The judge ultimately overnight, over the weekend, had said that the Trump administration must preserve the evidence and cooperate with the state. We know as of today that Governor Walz and Donald Trump spoke, that both of them characterized the discussion as like fruitful or helpful or advancing. I know Governor Walz wanted them out altogether, and we'll see what happens from there. But in the meantime, I'm going to share with you what I think is going to happen to the evidence, how we got here, and what do I think ultimately would happen at the end of this case. So first, as to the evidence, I don't think it was preserved properly. We noticed, or we witnessed from the Renee Good shooting, we saw the eyewitness bystander social media footage, and we saw that the killer, Jonathan Ross, essentially just put his gun back in the holster, he got in his car and left. We saw and we heard reports that they just took the bodies pretty quickly. And it didn't look to me, and I'm a neutral observer, I'm not a criminal lawyer or a criminal defense attorney or prosecutor or anything like that. I did go to law school, I took criminal law, and I watched Law and Order. But from that, I do know a lot of the times the process is you collect the gun, to preserve you're going to look at the ballistics, you're going to look at the gunpowder residue in the vehicle. They usually keep the body out there for a little while, and the forensic team goes and take pictures and put numbers down. We didn't see any of that happen. And so you can assume that the evidence, because of the rushed way they got out of there, that none of that was preserved. And so it's not necessarily the most credible piece of evidence for trial or for investigation. Same thing with the Alex Preddie killing. It looked like a hot mess. And then I don't know if it's by design, was by negligence or ineptitude or all 3. We'll see. Now, that doesn't matter because in courts, you probably know, they have other pieces of evidence. People have gone to jail when there's no body, when there's no weapon. So it doesn't matter. You have this thing called circumstantial evidence when they consider the behavior of the assailant before, during, and after the crime. Did they try to leave? Did they try to hide the evidence? That's the type of stuff the jury, the fact finder, which could be a judge or jury, would have to consider. You're going to have expert testimony. You're going to have, process and procedures, court manuals. People are going to testify as to what's normal. You'll get the eyewitness testimonies. You might get the cell phone camera footage from people around, the body camera footage from the officers. It was in a residential area, so some people have Ring camera and security cameras, so they'll get access to all of those in absence of a credible piece of forensic data because of what it looks like was a messed up crime scene after the fact, or a bumbling, purposeful, accidental of the evidence. So it doesn't matter necessarily. Jonathan Ross can still be prosecuted. So can all those officers that killed Alex Preddie, even without the evidence, actual tangible evidence. So it's not a concern. Now, how do we got here? We got here, everyone's to fault. Obviously Donald Trump's to blame because he is who he is, and he put this out. He doesn't like migrants. He doesn't like international people. He doesn't like the United States. He doesn't like how multicultural it is. He doesn't like the fact that there's so many people from different countries in the United States. He mischaracterizes and demonizes migrants, immigrants, and people who are not white. So he's ultimate to blame. And then Stephen Miller is doing elder abuse. He a sicko. I think he's a psychopath, sociopath. He's evil and he's hateful. And he has Donald Trump. He's pulling the purse strings. He's doing all these things. So clearly those are the top 2 victims. And then Kristi Noem is inept. She's cruel as well. She's yielded a lot of her authority to her husband or her boyfriend or her, whatever he is, her lover, Corey Lewandowski, allegedly, supposedly, reportedly, and Stephen Miller. And she doesn't know what she's doing. She has no law enforcement background. So it's because of her and her bumbling that a lot of this is happening. And then she's cruel herself because she sees all these things that she knows is wrong, and she doesn't rein it in. She has no law enforcement background. So Donald Trump is his cabinet are to blame ultimately. It's the blame of obviously the people who voted for him, the 77 million allegedly, and whether they were fooled, whether they overlooked his many, many flaws, and the fact that they had a really great candidate on the other side in Kamala Harris to vote for this person who bumbled his first job as president the first time. They voted for him anyway, so they're to blame. The 90 million people who sat out, whether because they're protest posters, third party, Jill Stein, leftists, whatever it is, the folks who are apathetic, the folks who are so comfortable because the United States has a safety net that they know irrespective of who wins, they'll be comfortable. The rich, the wealthy, the greedy, the racist, all of them, people just like, yeah, we don't want to vote for a black woman. We don't want to vote for Donald Trump. We're just going to not vote. I also say that, so the 90 million, because if you don't know, Donald Trump won the swing states by less than 200,000 votes in each swing state. And in each swing state, about 1 million people sat out. So you only need a fraction of those 1 million people to actually show up and vote for Kamala Harris. We wouldn't be in this situation. I always say we're ruled by the tyranny of the minority because the MAGA only represent 22% of the United States population, 32% of the electorate because they vote disproportionately higher rate than everybody else. But for the most part, most people don't like them. And the polls show that ICE, Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Border Patrol, all of them, they'll have a really net negative approval rating. People don't like them. They don't like the policy. They don't know what they're doing. The people who used to say mass immigration now realize that, oh my God, you're deporting like normal people, like our neighbors and kids and babies and toddlers and pregnant women and workers and, Uber and driver and Instacart couriers who 65 to 75% of the people in detention right now, of the 6,000, what is it? I think they say like 65,000 people detained or something like that. Nation, like 65 to 75% have no criminal records. And a majority of those people are actually here legally, lawfully. That's how they found them, because they were already in the process. They try to use some legal maneuvering to establish and make people who are legally here and classify and criminalize their status of being people in line, following through the process. So that's why we're here. We have those 90 million people voted for Donald Trump. I mean, the 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, the 90 million people who didn't vote at all, and then the 75 million of us who we just didn't do enough to convince our family members or friends, or we didn't just do enough. I don't know. We tried. So that's how we got here. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think ultimately, now finally, what do I think will happen? As someone who's in the dockets, I can tell you that the reason why they're getting a lot of people is because the Immigration Nationality Act has a law, and this is also how Joe Biden and Barack Obama, who they call deporter in chief, were able to deport more people than Donald Trump. So the standards for the standard is normally if you come into the country within 14 days, they can detain you because you're a flight risk, because there was a policy called catch and release, where they catch you, they release you, and then give you a time to come back, right? That policy was ruled not popular because people would never come back. So they changed the law so that and this is a concessions that was made during the Obama era, I think. So that catch release was over. Instead, when they catch you, they keep you because you're more likely to flee and sneak into the country and slip under and live under the shroud of secrecy and, under the radar. And so instead, they catch you, they keep you, and then they have a hearing right there while you're in captivity, and they send you back out. And that's why Barack Obama, Joe Biden have more deportation. And so that is the law. I think the law is 1225A. Don't quote me on. There's a specific statute. So what the Trump administration has been doing is saying that classifying people, if they come into the United States and they're immigrants or they're a visa and they want to get married, they want to adjust status. They're saying the act of applying for asylum once you're already in, or let's say you sneak in somehow, and then you say, well, I'm here already. I came in. I'm already living here. Now I'm going to immigration, and I like to adjust status. When they adjust status or ask for a refugee or ask for someone said, and they're going through the process, that new application they're saying is them trying to come back into the country for the first time. However, the law is specific as to within the border, and there are people who are entering it, not folks who are existing. So that's how come they've been arresting people who've been here for 20 years, 10 years, who established and have active visas or active asylum cases or active refugees cases because of the way they're interpreting them. So when they bring these people, they try to deny them the due process rights. They try to make it hard for them to see their lawyers. They try to make it hard for them to obtain bond. They try to deny them bond. They try to, and the law says you can't deny them bond. In minimum, you must give them an opportunity, which is called habeas corpus, before you take away someone's life, liberty, or property. And liberty means If they have a property right to be here in the United States or liberty to stay here before you detain someone, that's depriving them of their liberty because they can't leave. You have to give them the right to object to whatever reason you're saying you're entitled to hold them. And when you give them that right, every single one of them, especially if they're already here status, if you have the active status, the law, and you've been here for a long time, the law says you don't have to stay here. You can't be held. You cannot be held in detention if you have an active claim already, whether it's asylum, refugee status, you're checking in, and you've been here for 2 years or more. The law says it's discretionary. It's not mandatory. The mandatory is only if you're at the border, you just came around, you just arrived. Once you've been living here, you have status, it's a discretion. And the policy up until the Trump administration came is a discretion is to let those people go and then come back and give them an order. They want to keep them there. Some people say that Donald Trump partnered up with some private prisons and there's contracts going on. I've seen some of that things out there, and perhaps the reason why they're trying to detain people is because those private prisons get paid per body. And so even if the body is someone who's legally here, even as the body is there because they changed the law and tried to apply the law in a way that was never intended, in a way that the immigration judges and the federal judges will not apply, they still want to they get paid per body. And so they're just dumping them in there. Another reason why a lot of them are in there is because Stephen Miller had this thing where he just said, he said in an interview with Fox News with Sean Hannity, he said the president asked for 3,000 bodies per day, 3,000. And so that's why they're just arresting people without arrest warrants, because arrest warrants take long. And if you follow me, I always say that one of the reasons why the Trump administration lose a lot is they fail to follow process. Whether that is a process of firing probation employees, you have to only fire them on the individual by individual basis based on their what they do, like their work product, or and a lot of them that were fired when they bulk got rid of them they were excellent employees. So that's why they fought and then they won. But by the time the judge ruled in favor and against the Trump administration for what they did to probation employees, it was too late. And that's part of what Project 2025 said. Just violate the laws and worry about the courts later. And the damage is done. And that's an example of it. When they deport people, and this is where the Supreme Court comes in, they deport people and don't follow the process or deny them their rights to see lawyers or try to punish them or threaten them to ask for a lawyer. There was a case when this guy asked for his lawyer and they punched him, beat him up, put him in a straitjacket and dropped him in the middle of, this is, according to reports, in the middle of the prison so the other prisoners could see this is what happens to you when you ask for a lawyer. That is the account of a declarant who was deported ultimately to Africa, who was here, had family member here for 20 years. He asked for a lawyer, and that's how they treated, and they deported him. So they denied him his due process rights and beat him up right then and there and made a symbol of it. That's thuggish. That's against the law. It's criminal. It's violation of human rights. It's violation of international rights. And that is a Trump administration, and that's the Department of Homeland Security, and that's the type they're doing. That's what they're doing to these people, just treating them depravedly, violating the laws left and right. And so because if they ask for a lawyer, they get to stay. And anyone who's asked for a lawyer, asserted their rights, gone to the court, and given these arguments like the ones I'm saying to you, they get let go. They get let free. And that's what I did in my other video. They all were let free because they all were held unlawfully. At some point, one of the judges pointed out, shout out to Kyle Chaney for doing a great job of documenting this. He's a political reporter. And he pointed out that at some point there was a judge chastised the Trump administration for the argument that the judges aren't taking their cases seriously. The judges are quickly, summarily releasing these people, to kicking them out. And the judge responded, have you lost your mind? We've been doing this since November 2025, since y'all came in here. We're inundated this. We can't do any other matter. We are now experts because for the most part, you have a pattern. It's the same old lawlessness. You never have a warrant. You never have an arrest warrant. You're arresting people here lawfully. And when we ask you to defend yourself, you can't defend yourself. And you're leaving the burden of the person to have to get a lawyer. And when the person gets a lawyer and the lawyer says the usual thing, we dismiss the case, and then the government has to pay the lawyer. And it's a waste of resources, a waste of our time, it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time. The only people getting off of this is the lawyers and perhaps the private prisons. So that's what that's the situation. That's what we have here. And so how would it end ultimately? I think ultimately what's going to happen is that because of the pressure points, because of the pressure from the Libertarians, the NRA, the Republicans out front, the Republicans in the back, Donald Trump's seemingly attack on First Amendment, first open carry and concealed carry. Some of the deep heart MAGAs are still defending that, but whatever. But if you are a Second Amendment person, they don't like that. They don't like the idea. That's a slippery slope. of the government saying when you can and cannot, and saying because you have your gun, we can kill you. Because essentially they killed him because he had a gun, because he wasn't brandishing it. There was no evidence in the video that he was taking it out, and there was no evidence that he had intent. The fact that he was just directing traffic and he was helping the old lady, and what the people to say around him, they're trying to assassinate his character. And when it comes out, it's going to be nothing like his character. It's going to be a nice, kind person. He was an ICU nurse. There's video out there that showed him doing some tribute to someone, a soldier that passed on. So he seems like a kind, empathetic guy. His parents, for them to try to characterize him this way, this is not going to fit. People are not stupid. You did it. I mean, and then they're losing their credibility every time they open up their mouth. They go in front of the TV and they make a blanket declaration about someone they don't know, and just automatically defend without waiting for the facts to come out. It's unprofessional. It's not a good look. Because if the facts come out and it looks like he's nothing like what they said he was, and then what are they going to do with that? They lost credibility, they lost trust and the system, and people just like turn their backs on them and be like, okay, yeah, I have to go. And so they're not helping their case. And all they had to do is say, well, it's an unfortunate incident. The person lost their life. Apologize, not call the victim names, not call the ICE agents, the victims, the one who did the killing, and say, let's investigate, because that's what you normally do, investigate and find out. But Greg Bovino is not a good person. Chrissy Gnomes and inept. She knows what she's doing. And Donald Trump said he valued loyalty over all else. And that's why they're defending. Their first knee-jerk reaction is because they don't know what they're doing, is to defend the people, because Donald Trump says loyalty over everything. Now, if these folks are professionals, like the people who Donald Trump had in his first term, like General Mattis, like he had Bill Barr, he had at some point Jeff Sessions, he had people who were principled, who were able to put some guardrails on him and stop him from, carrying out his most depraved, I don't know, interests and goals and things like that. The folks he has now are just, they're not qualified for their jobs. They were either put there because they want to destroy it, or they just don't know, or they just don't care. And so they're fine with destroying it. None of them are qualified. They're all inept. And so he's got a bunch of sycophants who don't know what the hell they're doing and are just lucky enough to be there. And so when they tell Donald Trump to do something and Donald Trump says, do this, they say, okay. They don't buck back. They don't think independent, like robots. So that's how we got here. And I think ultimately they're going to give up those guys, and Jonathan Ross and all those men will be prosecuted and going to go to jail, because the pressure is going to break, and it's breaking now. That's my thoughts. Let's discuss more. JJ Legal, each one teach one. Share this video so more people know, and see you in my next podcast.